Hello and welcome to episode number 40 of EFC Soccer Talk. Today, again, another remote one for those that are watching. We'll see the four of us on camera today, one very special guest and one not quite returning guest, Ricky. We've been trying to get Ricky Duggal on the show for a long time. He's finally here. Our special guest today is a former international soccer player, Bruce Murray. And of course, we've got our now regular host, I'll call myself the co-host at this point, of Jabril Bubtana from EFC. So, Jib, I'll just hand it over to you very quickly, and then we can kind of hand it off to Bruce and Ricky from there.
Yeah, hi everyone. We've got, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but is this our first international soccer star that we've had, Dan, on this podcast?
I'm pretty sure it is, yeah.
With actual international appearances. So, yeah, it's definitely an honour to have Bruce on. But if we want to start with Bruce, if you want to just give us a bit of an intro into your playing background and what you're doing right now as well.
Yeah, no, Jim, thanks a lot. I appreciate it, Dan, as well. I played for the U.S. World Cup team for 9 years. I had an amazing seat at the table. The old NASL guys were phasing out. My group was coming in. And the new guys, and I say new guys, Kobe Jones, Alexi Lawless, those kind of guys. Brad Friedel would be one of the new guys. So, but I had this really pretty amazing seat right there at the table where I saw all those three at the same time. So, and for now, I'm still working in the youth game, and I work at the FCV St. James here in Springfield, Virginia.
Nice.
Awesome.
Obviously, that's how you know Ricky.
Yeah,
that's right. That's actually how I met Ricky. Was his involvement coming down as our player talent identification guy, and he's got a great sharp football mind, and it's been great. Ricky and I see things the same way on the football field, so it's been a really good year working with Ricky.
Great stuff. So that leads us on to Ricky. Great to have you on. I know, like Dan said, he's been trying to get you on for a while. If you want to kind of give us a little background to yourself and your coaching experience.
Yeah, I can't follow up with a player resume like Mr. Murray, predominantly mine has been from a coaching background. Coaching in England and then coming over to the US different countries and work with some clubs there and take people internationally. And right now I head up the talent identification in the St. James, as well as, obviously working bit part with EFC in terms of what we do, going across New Jersey as well. So my background is fully player identification. It's not attached to any club. It's more about being able to provide opportunities for players.
All right, great. And for those that are watching on YouTube, you'll see Ricky's background's got my favourite play growing up and Ricky's as well, because he's a fellow Newcastle fan. We've got Alan Shearer on there. So, good taste in football team. And we're about to become the richest football club in the world.
Who's your team, Bruce? Who do you like?
Alan Shearer, of course, he's idolized, by all footballers. But my team, my team is oh my God! If I have to, you guys wouldn't believe this, but it's Rangers in Scotland.
Oh,
I'm a dyed blue boy from birth. I have Scottish parents, and yes, Rangers is my team. Even though my best friend John Kerr, coach at Duke, is diehard Celtic. We put all those differences aside. But boy, I'll buy him a Celtic scarf, and he'll buy me a Rangers scarf. But Rangers is my team.
Nice. Good to know. I was just a little concerned for a second that there was that minute chance I was totally outnumbered by Newcastle fans, but not quite. Just the two.
I'm sure it's Bruce's second team now that he's worked with Ricky.
Yeah. No doubt about it.
All right, so to kick us off from a talent identification perspective, Bruce, you've been involved in it from a coaching side and playing. Ricky, you very experienced of it from a coaching background. So if you guys wouldn't mind just giving us an idea of what characteristics you look for in a player, what you think is important for players to exhibit to essentially give themselves the best chance of being identified and to develop their full potential.
Bruce, do you want to give it from a player side, and I'll do it maybe from a coaching side?
You mean I'll just tell you what I look for in players. I look for players that embrace physicality. I look for players that are very ambitious. I look for players with good feet and good balance, right? And I don't care if the player's pencil thin and he's 12 and 13. I'm not going to take players. I'm a player development guy, first and foremost, but I'm also old school, right? So I was raised with Scottish coaches and people where it was all about the graft and the hard work and the determination. But if I see kids with talent, I'm not taking the guy who can outrun them right now. I'm going to take those young guys who are a little bit not as big and strong and fast, and I'll develop those guys all day long. And that's the beauty of this game. I hope that other people share that opinion. Unfortunately, I do see in my business, I do see a lot of guys getting discarded because they're not big enough, they're not fast enough. But I certainly fit that bill all the way until I turned senior in high school. My summer year, I grew 5-6 inches. So I think it's important for player development to understand what a good player is, and don't throw those players away because they don't help you compete at the moment. If that makes sense to you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Ricky?
Yeah, for me, I had the fortunate opportunity to speak to a player from Manchester City and that plays for the under-18s. But a question they got asked was what was one of the big sort of traits, and he was just like hard work. So players know that the hard work comes first, and that you've got to be able to run for your coach, you got to be able to run for your players because that's what the game is. So the simplicity is it's hard work. I think when you start to maybe dive into it a little bit more, it's the understanding of, being able to see players' potential rather than where they are now. There's lots of information about sort of A-type player with a B-type attitude, B-type player with an A-type attitude, and which one would you select? And obviously the goal is to have A-type on both, but, it's seen that A-type players with B-type attitudes already think they're already there. Whereas a B-type player with an A-type attitude has a bigger growth mindset and is more willing or has a bigger potential to get to where they need to go. And that's not with everyone, but I think there's the character side to it that's important when you want to get to where you want to get to. And then there's obviously lots of other different ideas and philosophies and methods of how people look at how to go and identify a player. And obviously we can jump into that a little bit deeper as we go through, but being able to look at players and go, what can they do for us? What can we do for them for later rather than what they can do for you right now is a huge component. And I think we said this at the start, or I said it at the start, my job is I don't work with a club. So my job is ultimately, can I provide opportunities for players? So being able to, if they logistically have the time, if it works out with their families, that coming to get a different experience is going to be a help to them. That doesn't mean that every opportunity is for every player, but you can create players you can give opportunities for those people to do that. So I think that's sort of the basis and the foundation of when we start to look at obviously identifying players, and you've obviously got to have players in front of you to identify, but there's lots of different ends of the spectrum that you can look at how players fall into what place and what ability they're at that moment.
Really interesting on that, just to jump in for a second. I've been kind of just happened to stumble across a few stories recently of the type of players that each of you would have referenced within the points that you've made there. So Bruce, first of all, and I know I was reading a small story in the Players Tribune about Harry Kane the other day that he put on there. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of people know Harry Kane's background. He grew up initially playing for Arsenal before they released him, for lacking a lot on the physicality side of the game, and seeing that he wouldn't, not physicality, athleticism, didn't have enough athleticism for what they were after. Didn't see him having a longer term future, and his response when he goes home and tells his dad that he's been released, his dad kind of puts his arm around him and is like, "Well, we've got to work harder now. We'll find
That's
you a
right.
new, work harder.
That's right.
No problem." So again, maybe at the time, that ties in with what you're saying there, Ricky. Maybe a B-type player, even though on the top end, but with the A-type attitude and had the right response to that, and again, dealt with the a really obviously bad situation at the time, and he's coming out and could go on to be England's greatest striker. I say on purpose, as you've got Alan Shearer right behind you. But then on the flip side of that, you've got an A-type player here that I saw mentioned the other day. At the time, an A-type player with a B-type mindset. Again, quotes from Alex Ferguson the other day talking about a young Ravel Morrison. There's actually Rio Ferdinand on this one, but Rio Ferdinand talking about Ravel Morrison said Ferguson called him and Rooney over in a training session and made them watch Ravel Morrison specifically. And, Ferguson called out Rooney saying he's much better than you were at his age. Saying he's going to be the best, one of the best we've seen, blah, 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 but he just simply didn't have the attitude to match that. And, there was a lot of excitement about Morrison, and right now where's he, Sheffield United now, being given his 12th chance in his career and yet to make a change for him, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting that you've all mentioned kind of the psychological part of the game is incredibly important. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you are lacking something, that determination, that effort, then you're ultimately not going to make it. And that obviously doesn't just go for soccer, it goes for whatever you do in life, I suppose. So yeah, really interesting that's the important part, because we all want to develop players that, if they don't make it in soccer, that hopefully take that life skill forward into whatever they do going forward. So yeah, definitely. And I know that's a big focus of, I know I've worked with you a little bit, Ricky, of some of the other stuff that we do off the field for some of the programs that you run, and I assume that's a big part of what you both run with your current jobs as well, right? So
the big part is the players have got to want it, right? And I think there's a bunch of stuff right now, since we're all at home and we look at a lot of different things. The Robin van Persie one with his kid, I'm sure everyone saw, where he's sort of looking for things to blame, but ultimately there's also a choice that you have to make as a player, and so there's also that part of it. Us as coaches or trainers, where our job is to supply a platform for those players, but we can't ultimately physically walk them through it. So that's why the character thing for me is big, as well as understanding, like, you might not become a professional soccer player, but having soccer in your life makes it a little bit better and makes those other things around you more enjoyable. That's one of the parts about playing at college, right? So you're going to college, you're studying, you're doing all that stuff, but having that soccer season and having that camaraderie with players around you makes your college experience that much better. So, and it's not just soccer, whatever you're interested in. So I think those are big things in terms of quotes that come from players. Talent doesn't always drive everything, and there's a mindset or there's a characteristic behind it. And one of the big ones that I always like to tell players is the Messi one, right? Because we all know how talented Messi is, but his quote is, or the question he got asked was, what comes first, organization or talent? And he said, organization comes first, because without the organization, the talented players wouldn't be able to get on the ball. So there's got to be that mindset of how it's looked at, and it can't just be, I'm the most skillful player. It's got to be, how much do you want it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. And that leads us on, I suppose, to the next question that I've got is, what influences whether or not a player gets identified? Are there any factors? I know we spoke about this a little bit, Ricky, but
Bruce, you want to go?
Go ahead, Ricky. You can start this one, and I'll jump in.
So the factors for them to be identified is, to me, obviously, there's got to be opportunity, and not every club or every place that someone's at has that opportunity. So I do think it's important to be able to, if you have the means to do it, be able to be identified. But like I said before, there's different parts. Like we've talked about some of these components, off camera, which is how do with the birth years, with playing up. If I'm now 13 or 14 years old playing on a 120-yard field by 70 yards for 80 minutes, does that put me in the best position to be identified by someone because I'm playing on a field that maybe physiologically is too big for me? So I think it's not just about how we identify players, but also giving the right platform for players to be identified from. And that's where I say, not every opportunity works for every player, but our job is to try and give every player some opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Rick. Yeah, I think the other thing is when you're in a system, whatever, it could be the U.S. Soccer looking for players, it could be our club looking for players. You got to invest some real credibility in the guys who work for you, right? So like the young kids, the young coaches, the coaches, when they bring people to your attention, right? Can you if you got a kid who's 2 years, he's a little skinny kid, he's got some stuff, right? Can you bring him up to the group or the group ahead of that, right? Can you bring him in there, or are you not willing to do that because, that kind of affects what I do, right? In my orbit, right? And as a coach. But I think if you're really about player development, you have to give kids every opportunity to be successful. I've seen it. I've been to places. I've been to clubs where they wouldn't release players up to the next team because the coach doesn't, the record's gonna drop because this kid, is the best player on the team. And you guys have all seen it, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. So it does ultimately come down to the kind of club philosophy as well, right? And are they all on the same page? Do they all, work towards the common goal of player development rather than club development, if you like? Because that could be a big conflict.
A second on that's also a really tricky part, given the bigger environment that surrounds it, right? As far as, if we're talking about players that want to get identified, for colleges or for, academy teams, whatever it is, often, they're identified through tournaments, right? Particularly for colleges. College coaches will go and watch them at the most competitive tournaments. To get into those tournaments, you've got to be a highly ranked team, which means you've got to have had success results-wise. But if you're a club that's truly basing things on, around the player, having that purely player-centered approach, your results will, at varying times in that process, they'll give way for that. So if you're, again, we're talking about, let's say we've got a really good U15, you put them on the U16s, U15s lose a couple of games in the meantime, don't get into that tournament. Now those players might not have that opportunity. So I guess it's, again, it's not really a question here, more of a, what has to give us that better environment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's almost as if the only way to really, Dan, make it 100% foolproof is all the coaches are paid by the sponsor. There's the Bank of America is your sponsor for your club, and all the parents use Bank of America, so financially it makes sense. Well, let's say, for example, all the club's expenses, wages for the coaches are all paid for, right? So that you're not really worried about, oh man, I'm going to lose games, my record. And we all know this, right? You go in, they call us in, your team was 6-9, or whatever, and that's not good enough. And I've seen that, even at big clubs. So until you take, you don't want to say the pay for play, because we're all in this business, and it's a great business, right? It's great. It's very functional. It helps. In my opinion, it helps. There's nothing wrong with going to college and playing soccer, and mom and dad invest in it, and you make you get a scholarship out of it. That's amazing to me, right? That's something that people would die for, right? I tell people all the time, if I've got a son from a previous that lives down in North Carolina, plays in Carolina's academy, and I would say to them, if Jeremy Gunn or John Kirk called me and offered a scholarship at Stanford or Duke, or my son said, oh, you know what, I love Pulisic, I want to go over there, I want to go sit, I want to go try and slog around in the mud in third division teams to get to the top, I'd be like, you're out of your mind. I'd tackle my kid if he was trying to get on the plane. You know what I mean? You know, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with what we do, but we have to create another elite side of the game to get to the top. And the only way to do that is to take, you know, the parents' decision, you know, because parents are very influential in every club. It's not a bad thing, but it's not always a good thing either for development.
Yeah, definitely. And so,
no, I was just going to say, I think, you know, to Dan's point, you know, one of the questions is, if you're a coach and you get asked this question, would be, would you, if a player comes out of your team to go have an opportunity somewhere else, whether it be internationally or whether it be for a collegiate aspiration, are you willing to lose that game or games on the weekend in order to allow that player to have that opportunity? And I think 99.9% of coaches would say, I wouldn't stand in his way. But as we all know, as you go through life, it's very difficult to say one thing and do another. I am huge on delivery, right? We can put all the X's and O's on a paper. You can make everything look great, but are you the right person to deliver what you're going to say? And I think any one of you three all know me that I've always said, I'll, you know, share whatever you want to do, give everyone the opportunity to see everything. The difference maker is the people that are delivering that message so that players can have the platform to go and do those things. So, you know, I think that's a part that we have to look at as well as who's delivering the message or who's providing that platform, not just the platform, but the people that are in charge of it. Because we have millions of soccer players in here, in this country, and let's say 23 of them are selected to go on an ID2. And if that, you know, however many are selected to go to different colleges, there's still a whole host of talented players out there that we miss out on because we don't have the right system. And and no one knows what the right system is, but we want to try and, like I said, give more opportunities or find more opportunities to provide for these players in order to do that. And it's just a coming together of good minds and good people to find that opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. So just to kind of still on the talent identification topic, but something maybe slightly more topical for the time, as we're in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. And one thing from a youth soccer perspective that has been delayed as well as the season is the tryout process. And this kind of scares me a little bit, but I've heard it bandied about, the potential of virtual tryouts. So players sending in videos, or if there was a potential live session or something like that. I mean, do you think that's something we're headed towards, and what are your thoughts on that? I hope, please don't let my being scared of it influence your thoughts on it either.
I think every coach has been talking about it, or you saw it pop up on a social media post. You know, the essence of these virtual tryouts, I can understand why maybe they've came around and you're trying to give people the opportunity. Like we said, it's a pay-to-play model. But we all have tryouts, and the main part of the tryouts is to have players play in games where you can see them against maybe some of the players that you've already had, and they're playing against those players and you're able to see what their ability is like. I think even if you do even when you're a collegiate player or you're trying to go to college, you send video of you playing in games. It is super difficult to go and look at a player that maybe put something in their yard or in their garden, and they're just sort of going around cones or doing whatever, to then go and say, that's the player that I want. Because there's not enough variables to consider to go and do that. So, you know, I'm not for it. I think it's a very slippery slope to do it, especially with the amount of opinions we have within the soccer environment we are, which is, you know, obviously parents as well, coaches, and then even players when they get old enough to sort of go, well, I've got to sort of go on show to do this tryout in my yard over cones, and, you know, how many attempts did it take that player to do that? So yeah. It's to me is a scary thought. that it is going out there, and I don't see how you can go and get a player that you think is going to fit your team without actually watching them do what we want them to do, which is play.
Yeah.
Yeah. I to be honest with you, I think it's a ridiculous premise, and I understand why it's happening. But you gotta, again, I had some experience as a college or assistant with Harvard and John, and we you got to see players. I mean, you can get all the film you want, man. I can't tell you how many kids were bust once I went to see them play. So, that's that. I understand why it's happening, as Ricky said, but the other thing, and that brings up a bigger subject, is it seems like all the the book readers and the theorists are all coming out with everything, and everyone's an expert right now, and and the game's so simple, right? As Bill Shankly said, right? Passing, dribbling, shooting, that's it, right? I mean, it's an easy game. Pass it, find an angle. I mean, but now you get all these conferences and people and psychosocial, and I can't even spell some of this stuff. So I don't want to sound super old school, but I'm like, we got to simplify this sucker a little bit, right?
Yeah, I think there is a danger sometimes that we get a little too complicated, and we forget the true essence of the game, really. And if we keep it simple, then it just makes the players' lives easier as well. Sometimes I think we make it too complicated for these young players to understand what we want them to do out there on the field.
I agree, and you get parents who ask you like, formation. What do you think of the formation? I'm thinking to myself, do these people know that when the game gets kicked off at high level, that the formation goes to smithereens in about 4 seconds flat, and it's just chaos for 90 minutes. I mean, but apparently there's people that read these books and they tend to understand it better than you do. So, whatever. I find it kind of funny. But I understand the reason for the virtual tryouts, but it is just, wow, like you said, slippery slope.
Yeah, and just a quick note on that as well, with in terms of looking at what we're in terms of the pandemic and understanding players being at home and doing their work, right? They've got schoolwork to do, they get work from clubs, and so now you put this tryout on. I'm just saying, how much pressure are you putting on that kid? And we all know there's going to be an array of different parents that kid's going to go out there and put some show on, and they're going to be like, no, we need to do it again. And so from the mental aspect, like, how much pressure have you now put on that player to go and perform for 2 or 3 minutes that's now going to be sent to a database or a club where they're going to potentially look at it to decide whether or not, that you're good enough for that club. And so I guess I'm looking at it from another perspective, which is the player. Like, how does that player feel doing that? And I don't think that's a good environment for that player, especially in what situation we're in right now. The added pressures that they have, it's hard enough for, I'm sure all 4 of us have had days in the last 7 weeks where you're just like, what, I can't be bothered. Sorry, I'm just doing nothing for the day. And so we've got to look at it. And again, we've said the word simplify. Well, simplify. It's about the players. They're the most important things. So, the game is pass, dribble, shoot, cross. The difference is how who can execute it quickly, who can do those skills quickly, who can do the decision making quickly. We all know that people can do those things. If we have players pass the ball between them, you can do it. Put them in a game environment, can you execute it fast? That's the difference between talent. Having the difference in talent between players is doing the simple things quick.
So, just to jump in quickly with a thought there as well. So this is the one, I guess. I guess Ricky and Jib will know that I like doing this. Just play devil's advocate for a second. For the record, virtual tryouts to me are no good, right? But we're in a crazy time, crazy situation, unforeseen, unprecedented circumstances, all of that surrounding this situation. Now, one thing I've been thinking about, because I coach a team that is in this situation, what about for those teams that are going from one size field to the next season? So they will need increased roster sizes to handle that. For example, if you've got a squad of 11, 12, maybe 13 players now and you're playing 9v9, you're due to play 11v11 in the fall. how do you either recruit or get hold of, gain interest for new players in the meantime? Is it, do we have a combination of that, like virtual tryouts for now to get people on the radar with the idea to bring them in early season? Is there too much risk in them going and signing someone else in the meantime?
I hear what you're saying. My point was like, if you're trying to top end your roster, right, and add players at top quality, you can't do it on a virtual platform, right? So for the teams that are trying to expand, and we're in these unique circumstances, as you said, and in that case, absolutely, right. If you have to add players, you get a couple players send you some stuff, and you really need to, because you need the numbers up because of the size, you're going from 9 to 11. I don't think that's a problem, and that kid's gonna be probably a developmental player as it is at the lower end. I don't think that's a problem, but it's got to be a combination of both. But the idea of a virtual send a film in, and you're gonna, we're gonna give you a full ride because we look at you and we like you. That's where I differentiate it. But I agree, Dan, with what you're saying.
Yeah, and look, the younger players, 100%, right? They're developmental, and you're looking to expand your roster. Though, when you send the message out of virtual tryouts, no one said it's just for younger age groups or whatever. The expansion is that
100%. I'm talking just specifically to that group. That was all.
And to your point, though, what really needs to happen, and I think if you just take out tryouts in general, we've had a conversation about tryouts, and I prefer bringing players into my training environment. I think you do too, Dan, where you can get them playing with the team that you already have in order to see whether they fit versus just a one-off tryout. I mean, that's a whole different story, but if you come into it, is there a thought process that the spring's a wash, and let's say we're lucky enough to get out in August, do you create a 1-week date where people can have tryouts and players can go and look at that, and everyone goes on the same sort of platform? So, just with your devil's advocate sort of question is, if that's something that everyone wants to look at, that maybe that's the way of doing it, but that it's always going to be, there's always going to be a loophole one way or the other with those things. But I think evidently you're always going to have people that are going to try and find better players somehow, or there's people calling people because they know there's good players and maybe offering them spots that way. So I don't think you can get a handle on it, but I think it's a really good point that you made, that if you're going from 7v7 to 9v9 or 9v9 to 11v11, how can you fill up your roster size?
Yeah, I think for the record, by the way, so far, until I guess find the better option, better solution, I think that you've just touched on what the plan will be specifically for my team moving forward. If we don't get a spring season in, as soon as we do get back out there, hypothetically, if that is August, we'd use that first week, 2 weeks, whatever, as open training and invite players that don't yet have a team, and hope that we can, get 2 or 3, 4 maybe players, depending on exactly how many players we've got at the time, 2, 3 or 4 players to fill up the roster and handle, that specific level of soccer. So, that's kind of what we're rolling with for now, assuming that we don't get a spring in at all. But again, there's so many variables to it, right?
And I think what that needs is ultimately a bit of patience, which
that's the key word. Yeah.
Sometimes clubs may not necessarily have. So I think with a bit of patience, I think that is definitely a better solution to holding virtual tryouts for sure.
Yeah.
But moving on a little bit, we've got Bruce, you've had experience obviously playing in college and coaching in college. And I saw a tweet recently, which maybe is slightly controversial. And I think this experience could also translate to youth soccer as well, not just the college game. But it was a college coach talking about how if they encountered a disrespectful parent or a disruptive parent, no matter how good the player was, that they would not recruit that player. So they're recruiting the parent or the family as much as the player. Have you had any experiences of that? How do you feel about that concept in general?
I think that's a great question. And, you can look at it obviously 2 ways. Well, a great coach will be able to adapt. The parent's a pain in the neck. but I'm supposed to be a good coach, so I can solve everyone's problem. We had a situation at Harvard when we had a top goalkeeper. I want to say at PDA, Ricky, your old club. Is that where you were?
I've done some work for PDA.
Okay. So he came in, and the kid sat down, and the kid couldn't be. He was so shy, he was shaking like a leaf, right? And he was one of the top goalkeepers in the country at that time. And the father literally, John said, "Well, I'd like to," and the father reached across his son and kind of pinned him in the chair. He goes, let me just have a few words with the coach. And I thought to myself, this isn't going to end well. And the guy's like, okay, so we understand you've got 4 keepers, and that's probably going to be a problem. And again, John couldn't have been better. And the guy walked out, and John says, "Not for us, man. Not for us. Next guy up," because it was a day interviewing one after another. And, again, I have the same philosophy as he did on that. You bring especially in college, you're bringing a family in for 4 years, and you all have to get along, and you all have to figure it out. And, you can't bring in a parent who's going to constantly be a thorn in your side because they feel that they know how the game works better than you do. And so for me personally, I wouldn't take a player like that because it could blow up your whole program. It's like you have to be really careful in college. If you want to carry 32 players on your roster, you got to understand that 2 or 3 at the end of the bench that it hasn't worked out for are going to create somewhat of a cancer for your roster. And before you know it, you could lose your whole team. So I'd love to hear how you guys think of that, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, Ricky, have you got any thoughts on that?
I mean, obviously I haven't coached in the college game. I've coached with collegiate players and players that have came back for the summer and worked out with me, or we've went and played in a league over the summer. But I haven't had an experience of that. I think in the youth soccer game, it's a little bit different. Because parents talk and it's difficult for them, the player. But I think from the college perspective, I would like to think, depending on, I guess, how serious the situation is, and look at it and go, is that something that's manageable versus is it something that's uncontrollable? And if it's something that I feel is uncontrollable, then if you're a college coach, your job is to win games, but also you bring people in that represent that college. And that's evidently what that college is looking at you to do as a job. So to me, if it was something, I think there were certain situations that I could handle and there's certain ones that I couldn't. And the question I would ask myself is that something controllable? And if it's not, then I would obviously say no. But I don't know if there's I don't know this, Bruce, maybe you can put some light onto it, but would there ever be a situation where you would talk to that parent and sort of say, like, this is the standards that we have, and obviously there's no parental involvement. We want to hear from your son or your daughter.
Yeah, we got lucky because it happened right in front of us before he was to come, right? Before he was to accept or we're offering. But, after that, it was determined that there's no way. And I understood the decision at the time. I think the other thing is maybe just I want people to know out there as a coach, and I don't care if I'm coaching rec kids or whoever. I want the kids to play good football. I want to teach them good life lessons. We're all I think 99% of us are doing this. Nobody's doing this to make to enrich themselves. Clearly, we're doing this because we care about our sport. And some of the parents in some of these big clubs and these very hyper competitive attitudes for kids that are going to college, possibly on scholarship, that coach is the worst coach in the world. I mean, they can literally just destroy. I've seen some of these parents destroy good young coaches and just eat them up. And it's like on these stupid message boards and stuff. And I just want people to understand that 99% of the coaching fraternity cares so much about your kids because they want your kids to be better people, better footballers, and just good people in society. And that's really, as I get older and I understand the game or I understand life better, You know, we're in such a great spot to do that. Let us do that.
Yeah. I agree. I've used this quote quite a few this week. My last quote on this podcast it'll be, but it comes off what Bruce said there, and I used this morning too. It's one of the Jurgen Klopp ones, which is, you know, football is the least important thing of all the most important things, and that to me is such a good statement, right? That, you know, yeah, we like football, we all want to play it, but if you list all the important things that you have in your life, football is not one of those high priorities. And so you get to understand that when you're in this sort of situation that we're in. And so, you know, everything that we've talked about is about opportunities for players. And I think I 100% agree with Bruce that 99.9% of those coaches are out there to do a good job for those players. I don't believe that there's a coach out there going, I'm going to do this for me because that's going to better me. I just think people are in different situations and different circumstances. Different things come up, but I don't think there's people set out there to have bad intentions. Obviously, we all have different opinions. That's what makes the game great. We all have different opinions of how games are played. We all have different opinions of what players do. We all have different ways and styles of coaching. And I think that when we start to embrace all that, things like talent identification, things like opportunities for players, opportunities for coaches, clubs being able to grow, that all becomes a lot easier.
And do you think that concept changes when you're talking youth soccer? Like, is there giving a parent a benefit of the doubt and still not maybe ruining or taking away that opportunity for that player? Do you think it changes if you're talking younger players versus college athletes?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it does change it because, again, if you've got a 10, 11-year-old boy or girl, and okay, their parent may be difficult, but that player is the kid's great, he integrates with the group great, or she integrates with the group great, then there's got to be a moment of, you know, sort of understanding for what you can help the player with. But I think you still have to have the conversation with the parent. And sort of every club has its own standards. And I think it's important to be as transparent as possible when you're trying to help players, whether they're going to come play for you, whether they're just coming to guest for you, whether they're going to go on a trip with you. I think, you know, clear transparency is key in that moment. And then you find out if that's something the parent wants to do and get on board with, then I think you've got to give them that opportunity. If they sort of bite back, then you know that's sort of that's your opportunity to get out.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that that's something I would very much agree with. Dan, what about you? I'm sure you've encountered the odd difficult parent, right?
Yeah, I kind of see almost a case-by-case basis, given the circumstances surrounding. I see it as a lot of variables, right? Again, we've got to look as deep as what's going on with the family at the time. Do we know them well enough to make a better informed decision? What kind of issue are they causing within the group? I'm saying that because in my time working in youth soccer, I've definitely worked with some difficult parents. Fortunately, the vast majority are very, very good to work, very easy to work with. You do get the occasional one though on some teams every now and again, and they've all been to varying degree, right? Some to the point where it's only going to be better if that player's off the team, despite the quality of the player. But it's to the point where it would be, we do need to make a change, unfortunately, because of what the parent's causing on the sideline and what knock-on effects that might mean for next season for the team. How many people are going to stick around if this parent's still on the sideline there as well? So it has been as extreme as that with one of the teams, and I'm sure any parents from that team that are listening right now will be able to put those pieces together pretty quickly on that one. But again, it's to me case by case. I think if you're talking about bringing new players on board, I guess there's two situations there, right? So I'll sum this up, I'll wrap it up. But two situations there, right? As a coach going into a team, you've got your set group of players already. You have to learn what those players are like. You know, different parents are going to react differently to you. Like Jabril just took one of my teams. Maybe he's having different interactions with some of those parents than what I was having before. Is, you know, starting from scratch there for Jid. But then when it comes to adding in new players to the team, I think, yeah, we do have to let the family as well there and make sure that it's going to be a good addition. You know, even in youth soccer, I think you've got to check those right boxes to make sure that there's going to be nothing poisonous going on the sideline, basically. You know, to the best of your ability from what you can do within a tryout type window, right?
Yeah. So definitely a lot of factors to consider when you do come across those issues. But we're going to put the spotlight on Bruce now for the next bit, and seeing as you do have some international experience and you played in Europe, we wanted to see who are and you've got to include yourself in this lineup, your best 11 players that you played against or with. I know you mentioned Brad Friedel earlier, so he was a player I definitely grew up watching.
Yeah, so yeah, I won't be on total ability or whatever, but it'll just be 11 guys that I played with or against that had a big influence. The goalkeeper, and I mentioned Brad Friedel, but I got to play in a World Cup and also played at a club team, Millwall, with Casey Keller, and I can promise you guys, and I've seen some of the best keepers in the world. And Casey Keller was impossible to beat in training, and I don't say that lightly because, like, you know, I got banged a few in for the national team, but Casey Keller, he was, I can't explain it to you. Like he had this like NES type, you know, mega brain for where it's going to go and, you know, and how you're going to hit it and how fast it's going to come at him. But, you know, he used to tell me at training, you know, he's like, you're an idiot. I can see everything you're trying to do. And I'm like, it's impossible. And then, you know, and he'd get in my head and like, I just grab my hair and, you know, all the guys that played at that era, well, I'll tell you the same thing. You know, the best goal, the best training they've ever had in their life was trying to beat Casey Keller in training because it was just, it was off the chart. And so left back.
Just quickly, can I just jump in really quick? Got to ask about the Millwall fans. What was it like to be in front of the Millwall fans?
Oh, it was wow. Everything that you see in Green Street Hooligans is true. You know, I was part of the team when we were going for a promotion against Derby, and we got pitch invaded 5 times. There was horses on it was crazy. So yeah, it was. I can tell you this, Dan. If you scored a goal, you're the best player ever. You could never buy a beer out in the town. But boy, if you had a bad game, man, you would hear it from like the oldest dudes you've ever seen. I can't. It was just like your emotions would be up one day and then down the next. It was, oh my God. But going real quick, going left to right. Paolo Maldini played against him in the World Cup. My God, what a guy looked like a fashion model. He smelled like a fashion model, and he's the best left back I've ever seen.
Yeah.
You know, and then you go to the center of the park. There's so many options, but I'd like to go back a little bit. The sweeper, one of the smartest guys that ever played the game, was Beckenbauer. And then again, there's another Italian that I played against twice. One in a club game and one in a international World Cup game was Baresi. The guy was my God, what a play! What an absolute leader of men. Crazy, right? On the right side, I've always been a huge fan, and this is modern day, is Pablo Zabaleta from Man City. The way he gets up, you don't need a guy in front of him. He takes care of the whole thing himself, and it's hard. I mean, and on the left side, you could throw any Brazilian in there, but in the middle of the part, on the left side, I for you English guys, I know you're going to love this one. It's Chris Waddle. What a player he was. Talk about getting past people. He looked like a box of broken biscuits. But when you got him out on game day, right, he had all the moves, and you throw over to the right side, I'll go all the way back into the 50s, and we're talking Stanley Matthews, right? Everyone in the stadium knew. My dad used to tell me everyone in the stadium knew what was going to happen, and it happened anyway. So, and then the middle of the park, I don't know how you can ever go wrong. I obviously grew up, have some influence with what I remember the great teams of Manchester United, and one player who I never saw him quit and never saw his work rate amazing. Paul Ince was that guy, and then in front of him, if you're playing a 4-4-2, I would throw Roy Keane in there, only because, I mean, can you imagine being a player and you wake up, on game day, and you see who's on the team sheet, and you have to play against Ince and Keane. One of them's going to try and kill you. The other one's going to try and and chop your neck. So what are you going to do, right? And then if we go up top, God, you come on, man. You have to go with Pelé because I all these people say, oh, he couldn't play in this generation, or he wouldn't be the same player. I've seen film of Pelé. He was a goal scorer as well. But in deference to Ricky Duggal, the man standing behind you on the wall is the greatest finisher I have ever seen. Alan Shearer. My God, what a player. Alan Shearer is the first guy you're going to grab on your team and take into the battle with him. No question about it.
All of that. Absolutely.
I'm glad you made me and Ricky happy there.
Yeah. but Bruce, here's my question.
Yeah.
Who are you going to take? You got to put
those lists are impossible, right? But at the end of the day, hopefully that's a pretty good synopsis of.
But you have to put yourself in it, Bruce. So who are you going to take out? Alan Shearer?
Well, no, I'm going to be the towel boy on the end of the bench.
I'm subbing Pelé out for you. You're replacing Pelé.
Fine, okay. He's had a bad game. I'll go in, no problem.
So.
There we go.
Yeah, it was good.
Brilliant.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and are we going to try and name our best 11 that we've ever watched? See, we can't quite compete with Bruce's playing experience, but we've watched enough of the game, I suppose.
Yeah, we can squeeze one in.
Yeah, squeeze one in. I'd love to hear it.
Well, I know, Ricky, you want to start us off
with goalkeepers?
Yeah.
That I've played, and not to be biased to Newcastle, right? So,
wherever you think you need to be, Ricky.
Well, no, I'm just trying to think of the goalkeepers that I've saw play, right? I mean, that I've saw
on TV,
play.
Saying live, you've got to have seen these players.
Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking. Like Peter Cech probably is the one that I've saw live. That's probably the best one. Or Shay Given, one of those two. I'll let you guys pick.
Okay.
I mean, there's a Newcastle fan here, so I'm going to pick Shay Given for you.
Yeah,
Dan, you've got no choice.
Shay Given's fine.
Unless anyone saw any unbelievable goalkeeper, but all right, then we'll take it in turns. So someone can take. We'll go 4-3-3-2. Be a bit more exciting.
Go on then. I'll go. I'm a bit torn. I'll go right back then, and then I'll let Jib go left back to do his own position. But right back for me, I can either go old school mid-90s and pick a Forest player and follow my own team and go with Des Little. Again, just a class up and down the wing right back, did all that on his own. Or I can go modern Des. Fortunate to see Liverpool play last season, and I mean right now, hottest right back in the world, surely Trent Alexander-Arnold. So I guess probably
no doubt, no question about it. No question about it.
I'm sorry for Forest, but that's
hey, you got a shout out.
Yeah,
it's got to be Trent.
Left back from
there we
Jim.
go. Yeah, I'll go Ashley Cole just because I think he had everything. He could attack, he could defend, and had definitely. One of the first names I'd probably put on a team sheet. Not just because I played left back growing up. But
He was a centre back.
Centre backs. I'm trying to think centre backs. I'll leave Philip Albert out, even though he had that chip.
Yeah.
But I think I'm trying to think here. Well, probably I saw Rio play for England.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think. Rio, John Terry. Who else did I saw play? Tony Adams. One of those three.
Yeah.
I'll pick two of the three.
I'm going to throw one in the mix.
I'll complete the pair with you. I'll if we agree on Rio and Terry, I'll take that. I got to see England play. Those two playing alongside each other, and if you pick one of them, I was going to pick the other one. But perfect pair, two great centre backs, and I mean, as you'll see as we go through my players here, seeing England and then the random game for. I think I've seen Newcastle randomly play a couple of times. I've seen Liverpool play once. Aside from that, it's lower league football for me. So there's not too many options as far. But no, Rio and Terry, class options. I think we stick them.
Are you in agreement with that, Jib? I felt like you had someone else.
No, I was going to throw in Vidic just because I like the whole old school centre back look. But Terry completes that. So I think I'm happy with Rio and Terry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Give us a left winger, Jib. We'll let you stay on your left side.
Left winger. I mean, growing up, I was a big.
If we're doing 4-3-3, sorry, do you want to pick a centre mid each?
Oh, centre mid. All right. I'm gonna go with one of my. So on the left side, I was gonna go with a favourite player, and I'm gonna name another favourite player of mine growing up was Gary Speed. Bit random, but I was a big Gary Speed fan.
Yeah, what a player. Ricky, have you got as your middle man?
And midfield, man. This is going to be a hard one because it's one of those ones that like I'm looking at even modern, like a few of the last games that I watched. I was lucky enough to see Bruno Fernandes play for. Was he at Lisbon before he came to Man United? Yeah. So when I watched him last, like right in the summer, they played against Liverpool. And he was unbelievable. It was in them ICC games. And I couldn't believe that no one bought him in the summer. And Man United waited until January to get him. I mean, he was very good and just trying to mix it up there instead of sort of going old school all the time. Looking at games that I've recently been to that are live, Bruno Fernandes, I'm going to pick him just because he was one of the last really good centre midfielders that I've watched live.
Yeah.
Nice.
Good choice.
Tough to round out a midfield with them. I mean, I'm thinking Forest players, or I'm thinking I actually can't remember who was in the middle when I'm going to throw the Ricky will hate me for saying this, but I went to Arsenal versus Newcastle a few years ago with Jib at Arsenal Stadium. Didn't end well for Newcastle that day. It finished 7-3. So I'm thinking surely one of the centre mids, not bad for Newcastle. Surely one of the centre mids for Arsenal must have been a good quality player that day. Was Fabregas there at the time, or was it past?
Yeah,
Fabregas.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
I think Fabregas was there.
Yeah. Fabregas is quality.
If Fabregas was there, I've got to go with him again. Say too much about my memory at the minute, but again, it's him or Chris Bart-Williams, so I'll go with Cesc Fabregas.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't believe you've thrown Chris Bart-Williams in there.
So Jib, you're taking all the left side, so you're going to take the left forward now.
Yeah, he didn't really play left forward, I suppose. He played more left wing in a 4-4-2, but I was going to go Giggsy.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he could just dribble past players for fun. So.
Yep. Yeah. What do you want? We know, if you go striker, Ricky, we know exactly who you're picking.
Yeah, no, yeah, right. So I was going to throw other people in the mix just to make a debate out of it, but and I only say this because I saw him. Newcastle played against Marseille in the semi-finals of the UEFA Cup at St James's Park. We got beat. We wanted to buy this man, and Chelsea got him, and he was unbelievable as Didier Drogba. But you're right, he has no actual chance in the world of beating the man behind me, and that's got to be that person in there. So,
absolutely.
He's a poor man's Alan Shearer, so it's all right.
Yeah, and everyone knows my favourite right winger, so we can.
He played for Newcastle too. It's all right.
He did. We're of course talking about Steve Stone. Maybe not the best right winger I've ever seen play. I mean, given again, I guess I could have drawn on Liverpool for a few of these, but the Liverpool game I saw actually, unfortunately for you guys, again was also against Newcastle, and finished very one-sided in that one as well, as you can imagine, at Anfield. But obviously playing on the right that day was Mo Salah.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's close between him and Steve Stone, but I think you've got to go Mo Salah there.
Yeah, I'm sure many people are thinking that who are listening.
Yeah.
I was going to involve. I was at Newcastle Barcelona 3-2, and there was a guy playing. He might have been playing on the left that day, but he was all right in terms of Rivaldo. But
Yeah.
But it's your pick, Dan. So I don't want to get in front of that. So.
We'll go with Mo Salah on that one. Although Theo Walcott did get a hat-trick against Newcastle on
we're not going to talk about that anymore. Yeah, that's fine. My honourable mention actually up front was, I mean, I completely agree with Alan Shearer, but I think the best finisher I've ever seen live was Ruud van Nistelrooy.
Yeah.
He was just outrageous whenever I saw him play.
No, I agree.
But yeah, so anyway, we'll wrap it up. And Ricky and Bruce, it's been a pleasure having you on. And
absolute
honour, Bruce. Honestly, thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking so much time as well.
Thank you. No, thank you guys. I mean, where we're at, we're all a little bit different in age. I'm 54 years old. It's great to relive a lot of the stuff that I've been through. Hopefully it has some impact, or and people understand or hear how it used to be. And I have a lot of respect for the people that played before me. And I am so delighted to join you, and I'll do it anytime you want, because it's fun talking to guys that understand the game as clearly we all do. And it just that's what this game's all about, right?
Absolutely. No, well, again, much appreciated from our side. We really do appreciate this, and hope our listeners enjoy tuning into this one. I'm sure they'll take a lot from it. And
Awesome.
Ricky, as I was going to say, as always, but no, it's honestly the amount of times we've penciled Ricky in to come on. Knowing that we'd need a little more than a 30-minute window when Ricky's on here. Finally, he's here. He's shared his coaching insight, and we loved it, Ricky. Thank you very much, mate.
So awesome. I came on as Bruce's sidekick, so I was all right.
I'm glad that we're doing this on Zoom, because if we were in the room, there would be no more oxygen with Ricky in the air, right? So thanks, guys. Appreciate it, all right?
All right. Thanks, guys.
Guys. See you guys.
It's okay, guys.
Bye.
Hi, guys. Soccer Steve here. Need a little inspiration for isolation? Well, EFC is here to help. Have you found yourself stuck on your laptop searching with no luck for quality content to get you motivated to play? Dreaming of being back out there on the pitch? It can be frustrating, we know, but we have some great news. All you need is a garden or a small indoor space and a ball, of course, and EFC has you covered. Check out our YouTube page for our latest content.